Welcome to live coverage of GP Rotterdam. We're here for round number 4. The format is team sealed. Riley Knight's in the booth alongside the Pro Tour champion Simon Gertz, and a great pleasure to have your company around the world, wherever you've chosen to join us from today. We thank you very much for your company today. The format is team sealed, and on your screen, one of the absolute undisputed masters of this format, Mike Ron, his teammates Alexander Hayne, Richard Hohen, Simon, a wealth of success and experience for this team in the past.
Yes, Mike Ron and Richard Hohen are incredible limited players, and they have won multiple team GPs together, one of them with Alexander Hayne, but also they have split up for team events and then they met in the finals. That shows you how dominant of a force they are.
Mike Ron has 5 GP top 8s to his name. You see him on the screen to the left of your screen now. 5 GP top 8s, and he's won 3 of them, and all of those victories have been in team settings with people like Justin Cohen, Craig Wesco, and of course Rich Hohen as well. So he's no stranger to success. The Triple H team will be looking to take it all the way to the money zone today. A tune with Heather kicking things off for Huron as Kana Atkas opens up with a prophetic prism. Simon, on the other side of the table, however, we do have a team that's certainly worth considering here, because Kana Atkas, Yusuf Kemal Vefa, and Ibrahim Çelik, these guys are all, they represent 3/4 of the Turkish national team. Of course, these guys will be going out at Hammer and Tongs next weekend here in Rotterdam for the World Magic Cup. Yusuf Kemal Vefa has been in the Turkish national team for something like the last 20 years.
Yes, and he basically doesn't miss a European GP. I see him every time at these events, and they're a great crew. It's not so easy to travel from Turkey simply because of the distance, so hats off to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Kana Atkas here as well. He's the national champion for Turkey this year, the team captain going into next weekend. So obviously looking to build a positive team dynamic, get some of that practice under his belt as well for the very complicated team sealed format. In with a Foundry Screecher, nice aggressive creature here backed up by that prophetic prism. And a thriving Rhino from Mike Ron. These green cards have really impressed me today, Simon. We've seen some huge beaters enter the battlefield.
Yes, because also it's difficult to deal with the larger creatures in combat. If you double block, all the instant tricks really make it hard for you. We can't really see the energy right now. We'll try to get that fixed, but it's important that Ron had 4 energy when he started his turn, so he spent 2 of them to grow the Rhino.
Thriving Rhino now a 3/4, handily blocked by the 0/4 Consulate Skygate, and now Mike Ron, he's unloaded a Rashmi Eternity's Crafter, a very confusing card this. Let's have a read of what it does. 4 mana for a 2/3. When you cast your first spell each turn, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card with converted mana cost less than that spell's, you cast it without paying your mana cost. If you don't cast the revealed card, put it into your hand. Essentially lets you cascade off your first spell, and then after that, if you don't cascade it, you draw it instead. So a value machine here. Rashmi Eternity's Crafter opening up the value train. Toot toot all aboard, she says. It's back to Kana Atkas here, in for 3 in the air, and a Chief of the Foundry.
Very nice dynamic going on here with the 3-power Rhino bouncing off the Skygate, and now potentially 4-power Rhino would again bounce off the Skygate because of Chief of the Foundry.
Chief of the Foundry, a card that we've seen before, floating around in Origins drafts, of course, just over a year ago, and pretty impressive card there. Always a bit of a workhorse, but here even more of it at an absolute premium here, especially in this artifact-laden set that we have here, Simon.
There is a problem with blocking, which is that Hunt the Weak, taking out Chief of the Foundry would be a clear 2-for-1. On the other hand, taking 4 damage is not a low price.
No, certainly something that Atkas will be thinking about here. Atkas will have, of course, studied the list of all the cards to worry about up and down the tables as he heads into the World Magic Cup next week. Looking to make a strong show of things today as well, I imagine. Here is the Hunt the Week you spoke about, Simon. So prescient as ever, my German colleague here. And it looks like it's going to be a Gearseeker Serpent drawn off the Eternity's Crafter here.
Interesting card to see in Mike's deck, given that there are no artifacts to speak of.
Card's just a house even as a 7 mana beater. But obviously if you're getting it out for 4 or 5 mana, it's absolutely absurd. Atkas, I think, would be happy enough to have a Gearseeker Serpent on his side of things. But as it is now, just the Skygate and the Chief. That is a Gearseeker Serpent in hand, in fact. which you can cast.
Yes, there are the 2 islands, 2 full art islands. Could be cast here for 4 mana. Depends if Connor has something better. He hasn't cast a removal spell on Rashmi, so we have to assume he doesn't have one.
Gearseeker Serpent, its cost being very handily lowered by the 3 artifacts on Actus's table here. So he's done well. That's a nice play here. Try to stabilize things a little bit. But Huron now with the initiative. And it's Armorcraft Judge.
Wow.
Very nice one here. So this 3-2, unassuming 3-2 coming down for 4 mana, or 3-3 I should say. Draw a card. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter. We've seen this more and more, Zimon. We've discussed it in the past. We're seeing card draw move away from its traditional home of blue. And this guy here is really showing that green is able to churn through its deck in a pretty convincing fashion.
And Rashmi is consistently providing 1 card a turn from Mike.
Yeah, already Micron pulling ahead with nice little sequences here.
The best part about it is you can start double blocking very aggressively, and there's not really much that can happen. Of course, you might get 2 for 1, but as long as the game continues, you're almost guaranteed to win with the card advantage that you're generating.
Absolutely. I mean, Fron just drew 3 extra cards that turn, thanks to the Armorcraft Judge and the Rashmi. That Rashmi has really impressed me so far, especially as a 3-4 now. Wow, looks like Ron's happy enough to throw away his little 2-drop there.
Which is another way of getting 2 for 1. You accept the 0 for 1 to protect your life total.
Yeah, the Theorist shooting the bin there. The 1-3 not going to be doing any more this game.
Very reasonable decision.
Dukara P-Foul coming down as a 2-4. Obviously chuck it up in the air for 1 blue mana. Looks like Actus really heavy on the artifact theme in his deck.
Yes, not too many extra lands in his hand apparently. So Mike has to consider that he's facing an opponent with 4 spells in hand, 4 non-lands in hand. Also, the evasion of the P-Foul pumped by the Chief of the Foundry. Now, suddenly you do have to consider your life total also a bit more carefully, I feel.
Ron, card number 3 from this Rashmi. What an impressive card it's been so far, really.
Hasn't put many cards into play, though.
No, that's true.
Interestingly.
But just drawing 3 extra cards, I mean, that's a deal in and of itself. So Gearseeker Serpent, the play for Huron. He's considering his attacks here. Looks like he might have an energy or 2 left over, but his attacks aren't great into the board, dominated by a Chief of the Foundry here. P-Foul now with 3-5 for 4. I mean, that's something you could definitely get interested in.
I would be surprised to see an attack after having cast the Gearseeker Serpent. On the other hand, this gave Mike more information because the 7-drop actually had a relatively high chance to flip a permanent onto the table with the Rashmi's trigger.
Consistent piece of commentary we've seen about blue cards recently. Interesting to see both of these players playing blue cards. Been relatively underwhelming in the grand scheme of things. However, the power level of some of the cards at higher rarities has really impressed a lot of people. I know that. A lot of the rares, Sahili's Artistry, this sort of thing. And, you know, some removal there. Malfunction's been good for people up and down the tables as well.
There's a general trend, though, that in the beginning of a format, the cards which are more apparently powerful dominate the scene.
Sure. So you're looking to attack with Riparian Tigers just because it's very obvious it's a good card.
And the more things continue, the less that is true. It's more about synergy. So this is an interesting block here. A 5/6 being blocked by another 5/6 and a 3/3. So it's enough damage to get rid of the Serpent, and you would only lose your weakest creature. But of course now Connor can potentially foil your plans.
Yeah, it looks like there's going to be a combat trick incoming here, and I've a bit of an idea about which one it might be. We've seen... oh, no, in fact, I'm glad I didn't say which one it was. No one will ever know that I was about to make a mistake. Ether Meltdown has come down. Ether Meltdown, an aura with flash, gaining 2 energy when it enters the battlefield and giving a permanent -4/-0. Critically, it is an answer at instant speed that blue has to vehicles. So nice little way to make the attack, the block from Ron there much more anemic. And Actus's Gearseeker Serpent lives to fight another day. But it's another huge beater here from Ron. As we see the Edgecraft has come down. Girapur Edgecraft has entered the battlefield. Again, the Cascade trigger from the Eternity's Crafter has drawn Ron his 4th extra card. So 6 extra cards in total for Mike Ron so far. And Elegant Edgecrafters are going to enter the battlefield as 5/6s rather than the Fabricate 2 being used to create servos.
Yeah, going white, not really a plan on this board and against blue-black evasion anyway. Ron failed to kill the Serpent, so Connor's plan has to be to finish this game sooner rather than later. So I would expect to see, or I don't know if Connor is going to go for that, but I personally would try to focus less on board development and more on getting damage in. So, for example, the P-Foul is to me the key card to win this game. Attacking for 3, maybe 3 again, and then you try to close out things with 2 activations of Gearseeker Serpent. Just trying to stay alive while your opponent is building this huge board.
Looks like Actus agrees with you there, Simon Gertzen, as the P-Foul flies into the air and pecks old Ron for 3 damage here. It looks like Actus does have a follow-up play as well. Here is Foundry Inspector. So that makes all artifact spells cost 1 less for the Turk here. And the juice just keeps flowing here for Huron, however. On the back of this Rashmi, he's maintained a pretty full hand and has deployed some pretty serious beaters.
Yeah, this is just getting out of hand. But also, I'm very surprised to see a black-blue deck that can't deal with a single utility creature.
Yeah, the Rashmi's just sat there continuing to draw cards. That's the 5th card that Tron has drawn. For those who may have missed the card that was drawn, it was Imperial Voyager, the 2/3 flying trample 3-drop there. Another Simic or another blue-green gold card for Micron. And here it is, 2/3 flyer, flying trample. And whenever it connects, you snag yourself an energy counter as well. So a nice way to take to the air for Huron, but he still does need to find some way to deal with the P-Foul. Although I think in this spot with 4 cards in hand and a value engine on the battlefield, he's in a decent spot.
He has more value than he would ever need, and if his cards don't actually stop the bleeding, then he will lose the game. It's you don't just win by generating value, right? You draw a lot of lands that your opponents don't have. Just like you are counting the cards that Rashmi is generating, I can count the lands that Mike has that Connor doesn't. So that's another 4 cards of difference on the other side of things.
Ron down to 8 now with this attack for the P-Foul in the air. And we're going to see Filigree Familiar come down, the poor man's Solemn Simulacrum, and gain Actus 2 life. So Ron, as you said, has to find a way to turn this very significant board and card advantage into a way to stem the bleeding, as we see Ethertheris come down, tap to Scry in Huron's upkeep. Looks like he's happy with what he drew.
That's a bad sign for Connor, because Mike is looking for very, very specific cards.
And it's a Windrake. Draw a land, play a land, says Micron.
Windrake, actually not enough to double block the P-Foul. But of course, still a chump blocker.
In conjunction with the Imperial Voyager, still not going to be able to kill the 3/5. And here we see the power of the Chief of the Foundry. Takara P-Foul, something of an unassuming card, if you were going to be honest about it, Zimon, as a 2/4. Not a bad utility creature, but still not at the front line of your Air Force. But today, we're seeing it here do a lot of work.
A good way to think about it is 4-mana 2/4 is already solid, but 4-mana 2/4 flying is really, really good. Really, really good stats. So you just know you're getting a good deal for the mid to late game. And now I'm not sure if Mike is favored to win this game. It could be that he's just holding since forever some way to bounce the Gear Seeker Serpent, and he's just toying with his opponent here.
The trade wins here, a nice one. So we're going to see the Gear Seeker Serpents both return to the hand, and Dai Young is also off the top of Ron's library. So finally, and with 7 energy in pool, have a look at that. He can more or less snag whatever he wants here. It's going to be the Chief of the Foundry. So here is where I think Mike Ron turns the corner. If we're going to signpost the way this game has gone and sort of stick a little bit of a bookmark in this particular chapter, this is where Ron may indeed turn the corner.
Yes, but he had been holding this card for a while. I think he was not really concerned of dying. Also, interesting that he evaluates Chief of the Foundry as the bigger threat than, for example, the P-Foul, which to me signifies that he wants now to close out this game within 2, maybe 3 turns.
So, Ron, 2, 4, 7 mana. And it's the Gear Seeker Serpent. Trigger Rashmi. Oh, and now look at this, another Dai Young.
This is crazy, like how much this board changed within 1 turn cycle.
Yeah, just as simple as that. Cards 6 and 7 from Rashmi Eternity's Crafter ended up being pretty good, snagging the P-Foul, and before that the Chief of the Foundry. And now all of a sudden Mike Ron is looking at a very favourable board position. He attempts to turn it into a huge swing here. Actus with a little bit of life to play with, but still taking a massive chunk of damage. Ron not choosing not to put a counter on the thriving Rhino.
The main problem being that he doesn't really have good blocks here, and even if he did, there is almost no way for him to make something out of it.
No, leveraging a favourable position here is going to be difficult. Simon, it's interesting to see the way that we discussed this game, talking about how Ron was going to have to turn this advantage he'd gained into some kind of momentum, and it looks as if he's done a pretty good job here of turning this incremental advantage into an advantageous position.
All it took was a single bounce spell. The fact that Rashmi also triggers when you cast an instant in your opponent's turn, of course, making things even sweeter. I've been mentioning combat tricks a lot, but of course, if you are on the defensive, then suddenly they don't look as appealing.
Actus has had well and truly enough of that Eternity's Crafter. Rashmi hitting the bin. Was that a second one? Is this a second one, or is Mike Ron just throwing these cards around like you wouldn't believe? Unbelievable. A second Eternity's Crafter from Ron, maybe stranded in hand for a while. We haven't had the best view of the player's hand from our position here. He's just played Eternity's Crafter number 2. Rashmi's come down for a bloody encore here, mate.
That's very impressive. Also explains why this team went for a blue-green deck.
Yeah, certainly.
Not that that's a bad choice anyway, but...
certainly unorthodox in many respects. Actus now with the Gear Seeker Serpent coming back down. Another encore from this one here. And again, Ron just chucks them all in, and this time pumps up the Rhino as well. And that's going to do it for Actus. The Turk has had well and truly enough here as Ron takes it out in game number 1 in very convincing fashion. I have to say, we had a couple of drips and dribbles at the beginning, but Ron really managed to maneuver himself into an unlosable position there.
Yeah, flawless execution, if you ask me. And that was a pretty long game, so we do actually have a lot of these players. I think there were like three games already finished.
Yeah, we can check in with the results in just a moment, but on the screen you can see there this team of superstars, the Turks with their backs to us here. These guys do represent 75% of the Turkish national team that you'll see at the World Magic Cup next week. But right now, Richard Hohen and Ibrahim Çelik here, these guys are going at it, and you can see all of them on the left-hand side of your screen are up a game, Zimon. Or sorry, have won a game. Çelik also picking up a game as well. So these guys tied at 1-1. But the Triple H team in a good spot. Fleetwheel Cruiser coming in now. Shelik does have the Fairgrounds Trumpeter in addition to the Key to the City. The Trumpeter, a nice little engine card if you can get things going. Malfist squad looks to have jumped inside the Ferrari there and is zooming across to give Shelik a bit of a slap. But oh no, struck by lightning. Down comes the harness lightning. But a rush of vitality for the driver in the Fleetwheel Cruiser. And that's going to mean that a 6-3 indestructible vehicle connects with Shelik.
But, yeah, this means a chump block is necessary for Shelik to survive here. And I think Hoenn has even more goods to play with. He's holding an unlicensed disintegration. This is not a fair game. Actually, it's one of the big questions of this format to me personally. If you really want to build the black-red deck, given how much removal it takes from your opponent.
So trampling over for 3 there. Hoenn choosing to hold on to the unlicensed disintegration.
Yeah, he knows he can win any time, almost independently of what his opponents play.
With his opponent on 3 and a disintegration powered up in hand, Hoenn knew that the writing was on the wall for his opponent, and didn't have to muck around too much in terms of sealing that particular deal. So Ibrahim Shelik goes down to Richard Hoenn here, and that's our first result from this game, or from this match, I should say, between the Team Triple H and 75% of the Turkish national team. Alexander Hayne, the Pro Tour champion, Pro Tour Avison restored champion, facing off against Yusuf Kemal Vefa. This guy has been on the Turkish national team for something like the last 2 decades here, so no stranger to the top levels of Magic. And as you said, Simon, a regular at the European GP circuit.
Yes. This game looks quite lopsided because Hayne doesn't have the mana to deploy his cards. One thing I wanted to mention was that we already knew that Hayne would be on planes because none of the other, or at least it was super likely.
Yep.
And the big question to me was what other color would he be pairing it with? And black is interesting because it means that they are sharing the black between all 3 teammates, with the 2 Dayangs at least, maybe more, being splashed in Mike Ron's blue-green deck.
What are your thoughts when you observe something like that? Are your thoughts immediately that their black must have run very deep and they've got obviously a lot to share around, or is that to just patch up holes that existed in the decks? Because obviously the blue-green deck would have been maybe a little bit short on removal.
I'll answer this with an example that we just saw. Our game 1 between Mike and Connor was basically decided by the inability to deal with the Rashmi. Mike Ron is playing blue-green and could have similar problems if he doesn't draw his Hunt the Week against certain utility creatures or just bombs. By splashing the 2 energy-dependent removal cards, he makes his deck better, he shores up a weakness, and he doesn't take that much away from the other archetypes that are not energy-dependent. So it's just a very smart distribution of options, of resources by the team on the left.
That makes a lot of sense because, I mean, you know, you look at a card like Dayang, which is a good card by itself in a vacuum. 2 mana, -2/-2, no worries. But if you are able to do what Micron did, generate 8, 9, 10 energy, whatever else, you've got a card that essentially just turns into a 2-mana murder.
Yes. How do you maximize your cards? How do you maximize especially the commons and uncommons that you might have multiple of? And which deck can also get away with having that 3rd color, because it's not... you don't splash in your red-white aggressive vehicle deck.
So now we see Hron with all 3 colors assemble. Green, blue, black. Long Tusk Cub has already gotten down to business here with the Embrel Bruiser hitting the bin. Ether Hub's going to power up Micron's energy pool even further. Energy reserve, I think it is actually.
Wow, that's also an impressive start here.
Oh, and really nice play here from Hron. Interesting to see the +1/+1 counter there. Bit of an eyebrow raise before we see then the Armorcraft Judge coming down to replace itself. The best Shaman of Spring you've ever seen. And our Long Tusk Cub gets in there for 4. Really strong play from Ron here. Now it's up to Actors to find something to answer that.
I'm missing the high impact cards on counter side. The Gear Seeker Serpent qualifies, but it's not something where your opponent goes, oh wow, now I really have to change my game.
Yeah, I can't beat this.
Yeah.
That's not what's going through your opponent's head. I mean, even when it's played on turn 5 like this, it is just a 5-6, and, you know, it's a huge evasive clock by the end of the game. But right now, Ron, as we've just seen, can afford to be very aggressive once again. Down comes Servant of the Conduit, and Actus just can't block. He just can't block.
He played a 7-drop for 5 mana and couldn't block his opponent's 2-drop.
Yeah, yep. And Huron is happy to put the pedal to the metal here and get Actus down to a very low life total very early with 4 +1/+1 counters on the Long Tusk Cub.
It is his only real threat on this board, on this battlefield. So if Connor just has a way to shut it down or block it profitably with, let's say, a Death Touch creature, he wouldn't really be under that much pressure. But his deck, in both of the games that I've seen, hasn't produced any hard removal or creatures that really impressed me.
No, he's just been spinning the wheels here with Puzzle Knots and Prophetic Prisms and hasn't dug to a lot of action. Foundry Screecher as well isn't going to do a lot on this board. 4 mana for Micron, and it's going to be hunting the weak time. Let's get rid of that Scrounger, and that's going to be enough for Actus. He's going to say, enough's enough, big fella. You've actually completely done me for like a dog's dinner here as Micron takes it out 2-0, meaning Alexander Hayne and Yusuf Kemal Vifa, these guys aren't even going to have to finish their game. Simon Gertzen.
The mana screw of Alexander's second game not becoming relevant in this setting.
So pretty convincing victories here from Team Triple H. These guys will be looking to make a deep run into day 2 here with the pedigree that they have as well. Pro Tour championships, GP championships, all sorts of stuff going on here. And by the look of things, as we switch back to this game tied 1-1, the outcome, of course, irrelevant to the outcome of the match. It looks like the players may be discussing exactly that, Simon.
Yeah. Ron and Hayne, each Pro Tour champions. And you've talked about the number of GP victories, especially the number of Team GP victories these 3 have accumulated.
Yeah, between them, they've got something like 10 or 15 GP victories, not just top 8s, actual victories. So these guys really know how to party. Looks like Yusuf Kemal Kivifa and Alexander Hayne are going to wrap things up, just to bring you all up to speed in case you're not exactly sure how these things go. 2 teams sit down against each other, and then it is obviously a best-of-3 game of Magic between the individual members of the team. You can see there, player A with the yellow wristband plays the other player A with their yellow wristband. But it is best of 3, not only in those games that they play with their opponents, it's best of 3 out of the 3 teammates that play together. So if you have, as soon as you have 2 members of the team win their matches, that's it. It's all over, Red Rover, and you can pack them up and go to the next one here. We're going to head, as a result, to our pre-recorded Time Walk match, ladies and gentlemen. On the back of the screen there, you can see the tables that also were underway at the beginning of the round, and we're going to head back, Zimon, for a bit of a replay, have a look at what's going on the Time Walk tables here. These guys already off to the races. Alessandro Lippi facing off against Akos Kenyeres, and once again,
Lippi, Estrati, and Vasari are some of the most experienced Italian pro players. Estrati, of course, with the Proto Philadelphia victory. But I see these 3 play together every single time there is team Magic to be played. So I'm not surprised to see them do really well here.
Kenyeres on the other side of the table is the national champion for Hungary, so he'll be leading his team to the WMC next week, World Magic Cup representing Hungary. And the other 2, Norbert Sarkani and Ferenc Nagy, these guys also on the Hungarian team. Not an unusual occurrence. We've seen a lot of national teams turn out here in force, getting ready for the huge event coming next week. And they'll be looking to warm up their chops with a bit of a victory here in the GP Rotterdam format, of course, team sealed, just like at the WMC. All the action will be brought to you live from twitch.tv/magic in 1 week's time, my friends. Don't miss it. So right now, Kenyeris with the Padim, the console of innovation, giving his self-assembler hexproof. Lippy, on the other hand, has deployed a creature here or there, a couple of artifacts, Servant of the Conduit, and some underhanded dealings going on as well.
Not only did Kenyeris find another self-assembler, but he also got his creature back from the graveyard. The 4/2, what's it called?
The Maulfist.
Oval Chase Daredevil.
Oh, sorry, Oval Chase
so
Daredevil.
That's actually a key card, in my opinion,
Maulfist squad still in the graveyard there.
to make the black artifact-based decks work.
Looks like Lippy may have attempted to use the underhanded designs on the hexproof self-assembler, the console of innovation. Having something to say about that? No, my friend. Can't touch this. So instead, it looks like the underhanded designs may have to choose a different target. We'll see how Lippy chooses to play it here.
Yeah, but what usually happens in these situations is that it was just an illegal play that gets corrected, and then you are not forced to activate. You're not forced to activate your permanent.
No, the judge will rewind the game, obviously, in the event that an illegal game action is taken, and the players have the option of taking things from there. Doesn't look as though Lippy wants to. Oh no, changes his mind, and the console of innovation hits the bin thanks to the underhanded designs.
It would have also drawn a card in the next upkeep, because Self-Assembler is the highest converted mana cost artifact on the battlefield.
Lippy probably cognizant of that, making sure the 1/4 isn't able to turn into a value engine from Kenyeris. And in comes the Cobra. 2-1 for 2. The ability that pushes the Cobra over the edge for me, obviously, is Death Touch. The fact that it can trade up in an effortless fashion means that Nanam Cobra really very, very good against some of the larger creatures in the format. Also can attack without really any fear of anything getting in the way. But it's the Marionette Master that's going to come down now. Another huge Fabricate card in black. Let's have a look at what this one does, of course. The Marionette Master is a 1/3 with Fabricate 3, and you see here 3 servo tokens coming down for Kenyeris. But the really interesting part of this card, of course, whenever an artifact dies, you can have your opponent lose life equal to Marionette Master's power. So at this stage, only 1, but still nice little drain whenever any of these servos hit the bin.
I think it's a real bomb. Marionette Master is really, really tough to beat.
Fabricate 3.
Fabricate 3
just
is
enormous.
Exactly. And if you are ahead on the board, it closes out games super quickly. And if you are behind, it's a great way to stabilize. Also, this doesn't even mention all the artifact synergies and all of this other stuff that's going on.
We don't see a huge way in this set. There's not exactly a deck that takes advantage or abuses sort of artifact sacrifice or anything else like that. But still, with the sheer number of artifact creatures that are running around, I mean, a lot of them are going to just die naturally. You know, things like Nanam Cobras, as we discussed, the servo tokens and what have you. I mean, you're going to get in here and there with the Marionette Master, but I mean, that's not the reason you play the card. It's 4 bodies for 1 card,
and so versatile. If you need a 4/6 instead, maybe you already have some servos. You'll just start sending them in. If they don't block, they lose life. If they block, they lose 4. So it's a do or die scenario.
Lippy now. Oh, and Verdurous Gearhulk. How about this for an answer to the Marionette Master? Another hugely impactful enters the battlefield trigger. The Gearhulks at an absolute premium, of course. I mean, not just in Limited, in Constructed, they've shown their true power as titans of the game. But here we see the power of the Verdurous Gearhulk coming down and distributing 4 +1/+1 counters. It's got to be close to the best Gearhulk available in Limited.
I agree. It's not an easy choice, though, to make. You have so many options, of course, with 5 creatures and 4 counters to distribute. So I'm actually a bit surprised to see the counter hovering over the Cobra, which can get Death Touch naturally. I would have thought that, for example, the Pillar Bug is the more attractive target for it.
We see the Pillar Bug pick up 1 counter. Looks like Lippy is happy to put a 1 counter on the Cobra as well. I suppose that enables it to block the servos profitably, but still that's confusing for me, seeing as the Cobra is often just either kind of unblockable or unattackable.
What is going on here?
Noxious Gearhulk now comes down. Here's the... I'll see you one Gearhulk and raise you another, says Akos Kenyeris. Look at that. A huge play here for him as the self-assembler comes off to snag itself 4 points of damage for Lippy. And that's going to buffer up Kenyeris' life total as well, all the way up to 15 after destroying that Verdurous Gearhulk.
I think Kenyeris heard you say that Verdurous Gearhulk might be the best Gearhulk.
Well, the only one I was going to say that you could argue is better than it is of course the Noxious Gearhulk. Really, I mean, removal, a staple to a huge body with a relevant evasion ability. This card does it it does it all. It slices and dices and can make toast for dinner.
And one of the key differences is that Noxious Gearhulk has a strong comeback potential, whereas Verdurous Gearhulk has more of this hitting it home kind of property.
I see what you mean. I mean, into an empty board, it's still a 5-mana 8/8 trample, still a good deal, but it doesn't have the stabilization potential that Noxious Gearhulk does, as we saw there, gaining a bunch of life and now attacking like this. As we see, Nanam Cobra is going to pick off that self-assembler. Yeah. And that's still going to cost Lippy 1 life thanks to the trigger from the Marionette Master. Oh, but Kenyeris has an answer to it. Oh, very nice. Subtle strike. This is indeed a very subtle strike because this block now is going to cost Lippy 2 life and not 1, thanks to the +1/+1 counter on the Marionette Master. So Lippy loses 2 life thanks to the trigger from the Master here.
Also, Lippy loses his second artifact.
So meaning the underhanded designs can now no longer be activated. That's a key point. Here's Oval Chase Dragster, or Oval Chase Daredevil, I should say.
I love the Daredevil.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just... It looks like one of these 4-mana 4/2s that you sometimes play in Limited as your 23rd card. But then it comes back again and again and again from your graveyard. So it has like a weird indestructibility in the sense that it just keeps on coming back.
Just a nice recursive threat here as Weaponsmith, the Enthusiast, comes down. It's going to drain Kenyeris for 2 thanks to the underhanded designs, and the underhanded designs is now back online. Servo tokens, meaning that Kaladesh's take on Metalcraft with cards like Inventor's Fair or underhanded designs, meaning that often there is a way for these cards to become active. Weaponcraft Enthusiast now just sitting as a lonely 0/1, having deployed its servos around the battlefield.
It's really awkward for Lippy.
Yeah.
The lack of black sources makes it unable for him to really get much out of the lifelink from the Pillar Bug. Otherwise, he would have much better blocks. Just, for example, blocking a servo, gaining 3 would make a big difference in this race against Marionette Master and Noxious Gearhulk.
Yeah, and this is the key card here. Marionette Master is really putting a different, throwing a different edge into the mix here, because the servo token that's being blocked there by the Servant of the Conduit, you know, that'd be a free block in any other situation. But that block has now cost Alessandro Lippi 2 life.
Also, Lippy is apparently not willing to double block the Noxious Gearhulk, which would be a super risky play.
It's out of 5 now, Alessandro Lippi.
I'm just not sure how you want to win the game if you just take that much damage with a Marionette Master on the battlefield.
Here's a Kingpin now for Kenyeris.
Nice little interaction there. You get to search for the 3rd self-assembler of the game.
Oh, very nice indeed.
And then when the trigger has resolved, you get to scry to set up your next draw step.
Contraband Kingpin, one of the ways for these blue-black decks to shore up an early advantage with a 1/4 lifelink. Doesn't stop there, though, when an artifact enters the battlefield, scry 1. So Kenyeris playing a self-assembler and also getting a look at the top card, as you mentioned, Simon. And Prakata Pillarbug is Lippi's response to that. Not the most impressive card.
No, he's getting outpowered here, and he has been for a couple of turns. I really like everything that Kenyeris is doing, and Lippy has really only shown the Verdurous Gearhulk. Otherwise, there wasn't too much synergy or aggression or anything of that sort I see a lot of artifacts, but I don't see the payoff.
Now we finally see the underhanded designs. One of these artifact payoff cards, but again, not the hugest one here. Destroying the Marionette Master. Once again, Lippy here punished by his lack of black mana. Obviously, those Pricata Pillar Bugs could be buffering his life total up, as you mentioned, Zimon. But as it is, Canyeras with a pretty stacked board and cards in hand. Lippy certainly on the back foot, it's fair to say, and Canyeras knows this. He can smell blood in the water, and as a result, in come the clowns.
Very, like, I don't know Canyeras at all, but from this game, it seems like he has a very good feeling of what his creature should be doing when it's time to go on offense.
Yeah, I like the way he's navigated this. I feel like he really does know how... he's got a very clear plan for his path to victory. As we see Lippy line up the blocks here. Poor old Lippy's been struggling to keep his head above water, but he can feel the tide rising.
Now he is forced to double Obnoxious Gearhulk. It just might be too late.
So those are my blocks, says Lippy. And Canyeras now. Looks like it might be a conclusion to the end of not just the card itself, but also the game here, as Canyeras rather handily takes the first game with a very tidy conclusion, it's fair to say, Zimon Götzen.
Yes, so actually only 1 game win for the Italians and 3 game wins for the Hungarians. That's going to be difficult to come back from.
Yes, it does mean that the Hungarians know they've got a little bit of breathing room, but it's only going to take 2 of them to win 1 more game for them to get over the line here. And the Italians, on the other hand, they have to win 5.
The game between Versari and Naj is now basically the key part, because you can't realistically expect, at least not with a positive outlook, that Canyeras and Sarkani are both getting beaten by Lippi and Estradi. So
let's check in indeed with this game. Naj and Versari here, the Italian on the left or right hand side of your screen, I should say, and Frank Nagy, the Hungarian team member, on the left. A Skyskiff going to open things up for the Hungarian Versari with an aviary mechanic, and look at this. This is a great start for the Hungarian here. Veteran motorist going to come down and jump into that aeroplane. Scry 2. And in comes the Skyskiff for 3 now. That veteran motorist showing those young kids a thing or two with their rock music and their hip hop. Aviary Mechanic also going to chuck a couple of punches around, and followed up by an Eddie Tail Hawk. Gain some energy and pass the turn. Eddie Tail Hawk, a card with utility, especially paired with a lot of big beefy green creatures, but here, not at its best.
You also get rewarded for being aggressive, but it's not very good at stabilizing.
No, and being aggressive here is the name of the game for Ferenc Nagy, as he plays a Brazen Scourge and gets in again now for 6. That veteran motorist taking to the skies.
Yeah, Versari would have loved to have the mechanic on defense there to threaten a double block.
Oh, but check this out, he says. How about this one? Let me hit you with this. Here's Fleetwheel Cruiser, and both of these players trading blows like you wouldn't believe. Fleetwheel Cruiser, a very big hit here, along with the Eddie Tail Hawk and the Aviary Mechanic. So both of these players puffing and panting as they head towards the end of this race. And this, as you said, Zimon, a pivotal game in this match.
I don't see this.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, mate. We'll tell you what you didn't see here in just a moment. Sky Sovereign console flagship. The vehicles keep getting bigger and bigger, from a Skyskiff to a Fleetwheel Cruiser, and now the biggest, baddest artifact creature of them all here. The vehicle getting across, coming in for 3 as well as it enters the battlefield. That takes care of the Aviary Mechanic, and my goodness me, Zimon, what a play here from Nagy.
Yeah, and Nagy takes things a little more slowly now that he has a bomb mythic on the battlefield, and is not really scared of too much that his opponent could be having. So probably just preparing a victory next turn without much counterplay.
No, there's not a whole lot that Vasari can have here that might steal the game away from Nagy, especially after the flagship came down. But you'd think that one attack with Sky Sovereign is going to be enough to put this game out of Vasari's reach. He probably knows it as well. So Nagy not in a position where he needs to take risks.
Ferran wants to, from my perspective, shoot the Hawk with the Sovereign trigger. And he has 8 power in the air, if you count the Veteran Motorist trigger as well. So there is no reason to bring your opponent to 6 when you're threatening to win with an 8 power swing the turn after.
Brazen Scourge is going to power up this vehicle here, and Veteran Motorist is going to hop into the Sky Skiff to block.
Yeah, that's a much more defensive line, which depends on Nagy's hand. If he has something else to follow up, then he probably can just rely on the Skyship to take things home.
Naj now with the Sky Sovereign. That Veteran Motorist is mate, licking his chops, ready to get into the Skyship and take to the air. This Motorist has done a huge amount of work. I mean, it's got in for what, at least 4 extra damage over the course of the game, 3 or 4 points here, thanks to its +1/+1 ability. Looks like that might have been a removal spell of some kind. Oh, Chandra's Pyrohelix. And a Skyship trigger is going to end things in the favour of the Hungarian there. What an emphatic victory. I haven't seen something as determined and willful as that for quite a while, as Frank Nagy wraps things up in a very, very decided fashion against Matteo Vasari. And Zimon, you predicted that this game would be pivotal to see how things turned out between the Italians and the Hungarians, and you've got to think that the ball is in the court of the Hungarians now. One more game win away from a match win.
Exactly. It's really simple math. One game win and the Hungarians take it, or 4 game wins for the Italians, and that's the only two options, the only 2 outcomes at this point, ignoring draws because the time of the round runs out.
Bricata Pillarbug, the play now for Lippi as we head back to this game between Kenyeris and Lippi. We checked in with these guys earlier and we saw Kenyeris win in a pretty handy fashion. Lippi now with many more creatures on the battlefield.
I would always want to play the self-assembler deck in this matchup. I see so many 2/2s and 1/2s and 2/3s on Lippi's side of the board, and that's too much to really change your deck during sideboarding. So you're just really disadvantaged.
Noxious Gearhulk comes down once again. Oval Chase Daredevil gets out of the way. And then we're going to see an attack once again. Self-assembler in addition to the Dund Operative. And Lippi having to make some pretty unattractive blocks here.
Not that unattractive, actually. This was a very aggressive line by Kenyeris. He could have, for example, targeted the Pillar Bug with the Noxious Gearhulk's trigger, because the Daredevil, you have to assume, will return at some point. This was like the most aggressive line he could take, and he's not getting the best traits out of the deal.
So self-assembler trades here for the Pillar Bug. And the Seed Sculpt goes away as well, thanks to the Operative. So those blocks, as you mentioned, Zimon, not so bad here. Here's another tidy conclusion. That is a nice way to remove the Gearhulk. But again, a very, very clean 2-for-1 for Kenyeris. 6 mana and a full grip. You'd envy his position here. Lippi stuck with fewer cards in hand once again. Eager Construct is going to let both players scry. Lippi the first to send his card below. Kenyeris happy enough with what he sees.
No. 4/3 Operative. Lippi could have double blocked there.
To remove the Operative from the battlefield. That's right.
From the equation, yes.
Giving it the fact that it has Death Touch makes double blocking a real liability.
Well, he would have lost both of his creatures, of course, but it's a servo token and a 2/2, so they are not doing all that much for you at that point.
Follow-up play now. Weaponcraft Enthusiast. We've seen this guy a couple of times already today. Down come 2 servos accompanying the Otherborn Rogue. Featherborn Artificer, excuse me.
Yeah. We see now the double block that I mentioned one turn later, getting punished by a combat trick, which of course could have happened the turn before, but it's still a bit of a weird sequencing.
Self-assembler number 2 coming down. You can see another self-assembler in Kenyera's hand, so choosing not to search out the third one, already in hand. And Verdurous Gearhulk now for Lippy. He'll be hoping this card has a huge impact. Let's make a 6/6 and a 3/3 here.
I think I would prefer a 5/5 and 2/2/2s, just based on the power and toughness of the creatures on the battlefield. But
and it's another tidy conclusion going to bring that Gearhulk's reign to an end.
Might actually not be relevant here.
Lippy now with some very quick blocks being snapped off by those servo tokens. It's a double block on the Dund Operative by the look of things.
Oh, by the way, if you look at the top at our scoring board, Norbert Sarkany took game 2.
Oh, there we go. So now this is a bit of a dead rubber here. Well spotted there, Simon Gertzen. Well done indeed to the Hungarian team here. They've managed to get up over the Italians without too much difficulty, I have to say. They've really put things away nice and neatly. Norbert Sarkany getting up against Samuela Estrati in straight sets, and Nagy, as we saw, winning with a lightning fast aggressive deck there on the back of Sky Sovereign.
To be fair, the power level of the decks that the Hungarians are wielding seems absolutely through the roof.
It seems absolutely bananas, that's right. All done and dusted for round number 4 now. Congratulations indeed to the Hungarians. You see the scoreboard reflecting a very, very dominant performance from them. The Italians will be looking to lick their wounds and get underway with round number 5, as will we, my friends. We'll be back at GP Rotterdam without too much of a delay. Stick around, plenty more magic coming your way from GP Rotterdam. We'll see you soon.
Kaladesh is now available on Magic Duels. Build endless deck combinations with more than 1,000 unique cards. Play through hours of story with 50 campaign missions. Play Magic Duels free today on Xbox One, Steam, iPad, and iPhone. Optimism, innovation, and the spirit of creativity fill these pages, lavishly illustrated with the award-winning art of Magic the Gathering. Welcome to Kaladesh, a vibrant, beautiful plane where anything is possible. Join the heroic planeswalkers of the Gatewatch as they explore the Inventor's Fair and let your imagination soar alongside thopters and airships crafted by the best artificers in the multiverse.